Okay, so sorry for my voice, but I promise you that yesterday was much worse than today. So it's really, I'm very pleased to see many of you here today again after 2, 3 very complicated years. Well, it doesn't mean that this year is not complicated, but obviously it's really a reason to celebrate that we are all here together again. So continuing with the topic of the ECVs, now I'm going to present where we do it in C3S, and especially what is our aim for the next phase. So now, if I know how to pass the next slide, yeah, it works. So yeah, the first thing is just a very quick reminder: why do we dedicate resources in C3S to provide a program of ECVs? And well, the response, I think you already know, is because observations are at the very core of the Copernicus program. They really provide empirical evidence that we need in order to understand, well, the changes that are in our climate, not only from the point of view of temperature, CO2 concentration, which are the two variables which are more popular, but also from other variables that we consider essential for our climate. And this is as we define ECVs, is those type of variables that really critically contribute to characterize the climate and the Earth. And of course, they do have in common a series of features. They're relevant for climate. They are feasible to be observed at global scale. They are also things like archiving. They are also affordable, so they are cost effective. In the end, we really use all the rich archive of satellite data in order to produce, as long as possible, data records continue and also consistent in times what we call the climate data records of essential climate variables. So continue again with the global picture. That was already shown by Carlo before. Initially, this is a concept that was defined by GECOS. In total, GECOS defined in their 2016 implementation plan 54 variables, of which approximately 60% of them they are affordable to be observed by satellite measurements. In C3S, we are providing already operational services for 22 of these variables, those which are marked in red. And also, of course, they can be complemented with other sources of data, like could be, for instance, reanalysis. But you could argue that, of course, they are not pure observational data sets only. And again, that was also shown before. At the end, the aim is to have multi-decadal data records in order to enable trend analysis. So we divide our services into 5 thematic hubs, so atmospheric physics, composition, ocean ECVs, hydro and cryosphere, and land biosphere ECVs. And of course, they need your expertise. They need expertise of more than 50 public and private entities in Europe, many of which are represented here, but of course also our two main data providers, which are EUMETSAT and ESA. Also worth noting that it's quite important that all these workflows that provide this data, they has already been adapted to use Sentinel data. And this is very important because it guarantees that these data records will be further extended in time, which is the main objective. So now, looking forward, the first thing we could come up to our mind is, are we going to have a full revolution of the services, saying we are not happy with what we are providing, so let's just restructure everything, let's provide a different type of services. But I would say no, that's not true, because our user satisfaction surveys, they say that actually they are pretty happy with what we are providing. So let's, rather to do that, focus on consolidating what we already have through or supporting the continuation of the current services, plus also an evolution, as we will see later. And in order to really explain you better why this is our choice, consolidation rather than revolution, let me put you an analogy. So this is a car. This is a car that might look quite more or less nice for you, but actually, as a customer, when you go to a car dealer, this is the first thing you see. It's a nice car, so you might be interested in buying it. They're trying to really make it to look nice. So a user of the CDS, if they want to use the data, so continue with the analogy, this is what they would say. is the catalog entry. So this is the first point of contact with our users. And this is already the result of a lot of interaction with our data providers, nice text, nice view, explanation, download form, etc. But we know that the car is much more complicated than that. If we look inside the car, we know that this is really a system of systems, that they have to work all together in order to make it work. Among all the different systems, the engine, you may agree that this is the most important one. There's a collection of different pieces there that have to work together in order to deliver the end product. So continuing with the analogy, when we go to our operational services, each piece of the engine is a quite complicated workflow. So each of them, they are providing data, then it's all stitched together to produce this climate data record. This is what we are trying to do. I just put here a few examples, but there are many, many other workflows that they are working together. And still it's more complicated, because if you go to the engine itself, we know that this is a system of systems. For instance, think about the start motor. It's not about pressing the start button and the car just magically start. There is a spark, there is a fuse box, there is a solenoid, there is a lot of different systems there. So when we go to continue with the analogy, I just take the example of the soil moisture. Soil moisture in the bottom, there's a workflow there. They have two streams, active and passive data. The passive stream, this is already the input, is already the output of another process, of another workflow there, which also have to work in order to make sure that this is going to work. But in an operational system, that one is still embedded in another high-level operational workflow that take care of things like validation, things like monitoring that everything is going to work together. And still, you know that the engine is not going to make the car work alone by itself. There are more things. There are the wheels, there are the suspension, there's the chassis. So of course, for us it's the same for the ECV operational services. There are validation protocols making sure that the data we deliver is a data of good quality before delivering it. There are also, before we put the data or the documentation available, there's also a lot of reviews. So there is now workflows that are already making sure that everything is really well designed and everything you're going to have a nice document. And like in a car, we have to assemble all these different pieces together. We also have an integration and a publication workflow before we publish the data. And before you sell your car, you have to look nice, of course, right? So otherwise, the customer might not be happy and they want not to buy it. So of course, we have an EQC, which is going to make sure that everything looks nice. Well, at least this is the idea behind the EQC. The point of all of this, going with analogy, that the ECV operational services we are producing in C3S, this is really a collection of very complicated workflows. Before, we didn't have anything. Now we have a lot of different workflows now that they have to work all together, right? All together in order to produce this final product. So in the end, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to have in this type of Ferrari-type system, everything included? Who doesn't want to have this car? I mean, let's be honest, yes, well, everybody wants. But be careful. It takes a lot of years in the designing of this Ferrari. We are starting from scratch, from nothing. Now we have all these workflows. We are trying to get to the Ferrari, but just take it easy. And it is expensive to maintain, of course. But so we have limited resources. We have to live with that. A lot of power without control, results unpredictable. So why we're going to put more and more resources if we have let's try to focus on what we have, let's try to consolidate it. In the end, what we want is rather a targeting, efficient, fully equipped system, limited maintenance. Also, we need to have a good control over all the processes. So we know how to react. We know if something breaks, immediately how to react and not having disruption in our services. And of course, very important, easy to use and attractive to the users. Otherwise, they will not be interested in our ad. And going a bit fast, so these are some numbers of our ECV services. Not going through all that because I don't have time. Just quickly, we have already a significant, sizable amount of users, 22,000, which is quite considerable. One criticism we could do is that most of them, they come from the academic world, which is not surprising. Many of them, they are really scared when they use this one. So we have to really make sure that everything we put is really focused now on the user, so they really are attracted by our product. And I finish with this last slide. I don't want to forget evolution. Again, that was shown by Carlo before. We are also aiming to add new ECVs. That's the aim. But we have significant limitations. One of them is resources. The budget is what it is, and we have to live with that. So we have to be more efficient in order to accommodate new ones. The other limitations they have to be matured, but also what our users want. And this is why now we have this first analysis where we really see what are those we can be a priority. And I have finished. So this is just the end summary. Just to take home messages. We are really focusing on consolidating what we have, and of course now we have to put a lot of attention on our users in order to make it attractive for them. With that, I'm sorry for the extra time. Thank you.